A touch that lasts less than 3 seconds can release enough oxytocin in a woman's brain to make her feel emotionally connected for hours afterward. That is not romance language or poetic exaggeration, it is biology. Yet most men move through relationships without understanding which touches awaken that response and which ones quietly make a woman decide she would rather keep her distance forever. Curious. Today, I want to walk you through 7 specific touches that can completely change how a woman experiences your presence. And the 5th one in particular almost feels like an unfair advantage. There is something many people never say openly. A mature woman does not fall in love because of clever words anymore. She has heard compliments countless times. She has received long romantic messages and sat through dinners where someone tried very hard to say the perfect thing. Over time, those words stop having the same effect. What actually reaches her is something far deeper and more instinctive. Touch. But not careless or awkward contact. Not the kind of touch someone imitates after watching a movie. I am talking about intentional, thoughtful contact that carries emotional meaning without needing explanation. The right touch can communicate safety, warmth, confidence, desire, and care without a single sentence. A fascinating experiment led by psychologist Dasher Keltner at University of California, Berkeley explored this idea. In the study, strangers attempted to communicate emotions simply by briefly touching another person's forearm. They were not allowed to speak or use facial expressions, just touch, surprised. Surprisingly, participants could correctly identify emotions such as gratitude, compassion, and love nearly 78% of the time. Think about that. Nearly 80% accuracy with nothing but touch. Words rarely reach that level of clarity. That helps explain something many men notice but struggle to understand. Some men seem to create a sense of connection with very little effort, while others say all the right things and still end up hearing that familiar line about being a good friend. Thoughtful. Often the difference is not in their speech. It is in how they communicate their presence and touch. A mature woman, especially one who has lived through enough relationships to recognize sincerity, responds to that difference immediately. Before I explain the 7 touches, there is something important to keep in mind. 2 of them may sound incredibly simple. In fact, they are so subtle that you might feel tempted to dismiss them. Don't. Curious. Those are often the ones women say affect them the most. And the final one on the list has such a powerful psychological effect that relationship therapists actually recommend it to couples struggling to reconnect. I will explain why when we reach it. The first touch is what I like to call the slow guiding hand on the lower back. At first glance, it might seem like ordinary politeness, but the reason it works runs deeper than basic manners. The lower back is filled with sensitive nerve endings connected to parts of the brain responsible for emotional processing. Thoughtful. When a man gently places his hand there, perhaps guiding her through a doorway, helping her move through a crowded room, or standing beside her during an event, it sends a surprisingly strong signal to the nervous system. However, the details matter enormously. A quick pat feels distant, almost like a casual gesture from a relative. Too much pressure can feel controlling. But a steady, warm placement of the palm with calm confidence communicates something very different. Psychologists sometimes describe it as a protective bonding signal. Her body interprets it as reassurance. Oxytocin begins to rise, and her mind starts linking your presence with a sense of calm and safety. Thoughtful. For many mature women, this moment carries unexpected emotional weight. Many of them have spent years being independent and handling everything themselves. They have learned to be their own protector. When someone quietly offers that supportive gesture without trying to dominate or impress, it can feel deeply meaningful. One woman once described a moment when a man placed his hand on her back while they walked into a restaurant. Sighs. She said it was the first time in years she felt truly chosen. That is the quiet power behind such a small movement. The second touch is something surprisingly overlooked. It is the two-handed handhold. Holding hands by itself is common. People do it all the time. But there is something profoundly different about gently taking her hand and then wrapping your other hand around it as well, holding it between both of yours. Thoughtful. This works partly because of something called bilateral stimulation. When both sides of the body are engaged through touch, the brain interprets the sensation as focused presence and emotional attention. Curious. Therapists sometimes use similar techniques in certain forms of trauma therapy to help people feel grounded and safe. When you hold her hand with both of yours while she is speaking or sharing something personal, the message is unmistakable. It says you are here with her fully. Many mature women have experienced relationships where someone was physically present but mentally somewhere else. Their partner might have been sitting across the table but distracted by a phone, work stress, or something entirely different. When someone gives them undivided attention through a simple two-handed gesture, the contrast can feel powerful. Thoughtful. In that moment, her mind begins to recognize that this interaction feels different. The third touch often surprises people because of how simple it is. Curious. It is the gentle forehead-to-forehead contact, not a kiss, just resting your forehead against hers for a quiet moment. When two people do this naturally, the outside world fades a little. Breathing slows, the distance between them disappears, and there is a shared stillness. Relationship researcher Sue Johnson often describes certain brief interactions between partners as bonding moments. These are small experiences that activate the attachment system in adults in a similar way nurturing contact affects infants. The forehead touch is one of those moments. Thoughtful. Why is it so powerful? Because it requires closeness and vulnerability from both people. You cannot perform it casually from a distance. Both individuals must pause and allow the moment to exist. For a woman who has built emotional walls over time, this gesture can feel like a quiet invitation rather than a demand. It communicates presence without pressure. Size. A man who can share that moment without rushing or trying to turn it into something else demonstrates a level of emotional awareness that many people rarely encounter. The fourth touch involves the back of the neck. This area, often called the nape, is extremely sensitive because it contains a dense network of nerve endings. It is also a part of the body we rarely see ourselves, which makes it naturally vulnerable. Curious, when someone you trust gently places their hand there, it can create a unique combination of sensations, both comfort and excitement at the same time. Most touches create either reassurance or attraction, but this one can produce both simultaneously. When done appropriately, perhaps while sitting close together or leaning in during a conversation, the brain quickly evaluates whether the situation feels safe. Size. If it does, the body responds with a release of dopamine and oxytocin, the same chemicals strongly connected to bonding and romantic attachment. However, this touch requires good timing. It is not something appropriate at the very beginning of an interaction. Trust must already exist. When used naturally after that trust is established, it communicates quiet confidence and closeness rather than pressure. Size. The fifth touch is the one I mentioned earlier. It seems almost insignificant, yet it has a surprisingly strong effect. Curious. It is the gentle movement of the thumb across her skin while you are already holding her hand or resting your hand on her arm or shoulder. A slow, subtle thumb stroke back and forth. This works because of a special group of nerve fibers that respond specifically to slow, gentle stroking. These nerves are directly connected to parts of the brain responsible for emotional closeness. Curious research from scientists at the University of Gothenburg has shown that this kind of touch activates the insular cortex, an area linked with feelings of intimacy and social bonding. The beauty of this gesture is that it often happens almost unconsciously. You do not need to make a show of it or even mention it. Thoughtful. While you continue a normal conversation, that slow movement sends subtle signals to her nervous system that create a sense of warmth and connection. Because it feels natural rather than rehearsed, it often leaves a deeper impression than dramatic romantic gestures. The sixth touch is what could be called the silent pull. Imagine sitting beside someone or standing next to them and gently drawing them closer without saying anything. Softly, maybe your arm wraps around her shoulders or your hand lightly guides her waist as you close the space between you. In attachment psychology, there is a concept known as proximity seeking. People who feel secure in a relationship naturally want to reduce distance between themselves and the person they care about. Thoughtful. By drawing her closer without making an announcement, you are communicating that instinct through action. For many mature women, this carries emotional meaning because they have experienced relationships where closeness felt conditional. They may have felt they needed to earn affection or meet certain expectations before receiving it. When someone pulls them close simply because they enjoy their presence, it quietly challenges those old beliefs. Thoughtful. The message becomes clear: being near you is enough. Finally, we reach the seventh touch, the one with the strongest psychological impact of all. Pause. It is the long, genuine hug, not the quick, polite squeeze or the one-armed greeting. A full embrace where both people hold each other chest to chest for at least 20 seconds. Research published in the journal Psychoneuroendocrinology has shown that hugs lasting around 20 seconds trigger a significant release of oxytocin while also lowering cortisol, the hormone associated with stress. That means a long hug does more than feel comforting emotionally. Curious. It actually changes the body's chemistry. Heart rate slows, tension decreases, and the nervous system shifts into a relaxed state where emotional connection becomes easier. Relationship expert John Gottman, whose work has spanned decades, often recommends extended physical holding as a way for couples to rebuild emotional trust. Thoughtful. It is not simply symbolic, it is a real physiological tool for reconnecting. For a mature woman, this can be especially meaningful. By the time someone reaches their 40s or 50s, they have likely carried experiences of loss, disappointment, or loneliness that they rarely discuss. Many have learned to stay strong because life required it. When someone holds them in a calm, patient embrace that lasts longer than the usual polite moment, it can create a sense of relief they may not have felt in a long time. Size. In that space, they do not have to hold everything together. They can simply exist in the moment. And that may be the most powerful gift any touch can offer. Not excitement or performance, but relief. Softly. The permission to relax and feel supported for a moment. So now you know these 7 touches, each one rooted in psychology, neuroscience, and real human experience. None of them require money, status, or elaborate planning. What they require is awareness, intention, and the willingness to slow down and be genuinely present with another person. Thoughtful. But understanding touch is only one part of the bigger picture. A mature woman rarely waits silently for someone to figure everything out. She also sends signals of her own, subtle, consistent behaviors that reveal when she feels a genuine connection. Curious. Many men miss those signals completely and later wonder why the opportunity slipped away. But understanding touch is only one part of the bigger picture. Thoughtful. A mature woman rarely waits silently for someone to figure everything out. She also sends signals of her own, subtle, consistent behaviors that reveal when she feels a genuine connection. Many men miss those signals completely and later wonder why the opportunity slipped away. That is why the next video on your screen is important. It explores 6 clear behaviors a woman shows when she already feels drawn toward deeper closeness. Curious. Once you understand how to recognize those signs, the moments that matter will no longer pass you by. Click it now and keep learning, because recognizing the moment is just as important as knowing what to do when it arrives.